The frozen wilderness of Montana is no place for the weak. Winter's brutal chill conceals as much danger as breathtaking beauty. Life and death perform a treacherous dance on a razor's edge. A lone bobcat cub, utterly alone and desperately starving, far too young to fend for himself, stumbles into a world infinitely crueler than he ever imagined. The shadows themselves seem to move with menace. The snow whispers chilling secrets. Suddenly, his fragile world is violently turned upside down as a pack of wolves closes in. This wolf pack, hardened by winter's merciless grip, has marked him as their next meal. But fate, that fickle mistress, is unpredictable. Just as the wolves are about to strike, and all hope seems utterly lost, an unexpected force intervenes, setting off a chain of events that defies nature's most ruthless rules. The wild reveals a twist, a shocking turn that challenges everything we think we know. Prepare to witness a story where raw survival instinct and unwavering courage collide in the icy grip of winter, leaving you questioning whether nature's delicate balance can ever truly be restored. The bitter wind howled relentlessly through the dense pine forest of northern Montana, carrying with it tiny, glittering crystals of ice that sparkled like a million diamond shards in the weak winter sunlight. It was early February, and the Flathead National Forest lay buried under a staggering 3 feet of snow. Its usual vibrant green expanse had been transformed into a stark, white wilderness. In this unforgiving landscape, life and death played out their eternal dance with relentless regularity. For Max, a tiny, 4-month-old bobcat cub, this dance had suddenly become terrifyingly real. His mother had vanished 3 agonizing days ago while hunting, leaving him utterly alone in their den beneath a fallen spruce tree. Hunger, a gnawing, relentless beast, had finally driven him out into the open. His instincts warred fiercely with his paralyzing fear as he desperately attempted to find food in a world that seemed determined to annihilate him. The young cub's reddish-brown fur, adorned with distinctive black rosettes, stood out starkly against the pristine snow as he cautiously made his way through the silent forest. His normally proud ears were flattened against his head in terror, and his stub of a tail twitched nervously as he tested each treacherous step. At barely 12 pounds, Max was significantly smaller than an adult bobcat, his tender youth evident in his slightly gangly limbs and the remnants of soft kitten fluff still clinging to his neck. 20 miles away, in the small town of Whitefish, Montana, Robert Bob Johnson was preparing for what he thought would be a routine day of wildlife monitoring. At 58 years old, Bob had dedicated the better part of 3 decades to working as a wildlife biologist for the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Department. His weathered face, deeply creased by years of relentless exposure to the elements, bore testament to countless hours spent in the unforgiving wilderness. The silver threading through his dark hair and beard seemed to perfectly mirror the stark winter landscape he so often traversed. "You heading out today, Dad?" Emily Johnson's voice, warm and familiar, drifted from the cozy kitchen of their modest ranch-style home. At 28, she had bravely followed in her father's footsteps, working as a dedicated veterinarian at the local wildlife rehabilitation center. Bob pulled on his heavy winter boots, nodding as he meticulously checked his gear. Got reports of increased wolf activity in the eastern sector. Need to check if they're getting too close to the ranches. He patted the tranquilizer gun in its holster, a tool he desperately hoped he wouldn't need to use. In all his years of devoted service, Bob had always believed in minimal intervention, allowing nature to take its often harsh course whenever possible. Emily appeared in the doorway, holding out a steaming thermos of coffee. "Be careful out there. The weather reports are calling for another nasty storm system moving in by afternoon." "Always am, kiddo," Bob replied, accepting the thermos with a warm smile. The familiar nickname, a fond reminder of how Emily had earned it, despite now being a grown woman with credentials that rivaled his own. "How's that young mountain lion doing at the center?" "Much better. Should be ready for release by next week." Emily's eyes sparkled with pride. The rehabilitation center having become her life's work, a calling that clearly ran deep in the family. As Bob headed out to his trusty pickup truck, the weight of his equipment familiar and comforting against his back, he couldn't have known that this day would shatter everything he believed about natural selection and human intervention. The morning sun cast long, eerie shadows across the snow. As he drove his Ford F-150 along the Forest Service road, its snow chains crunching rhythmically against the packed ice beneath. Meanwhile, driven by the agonizing pangs of hunger, Max had wandered farther from his den than ever before. The gnawing emptiness in his belly had become an unbearable torment, driving him to take increasingly desperate risks. His mother had begun teaching him the vital skills of hunting before her sudden disappearance. But those lessons had barely scratched the surface of what he desperately needed to know to survive on his own. The young bobcat's incredibly keen ears picked up the faint sound of small claws scratching against bark. A red squirrel, perhaps, or a pine marten. His instincts, primal and urgent, took over, and he dropped into a low crouch, his spotted coat miraculously helping him blend with the dappled shadows of the forest floor. But just as he prepared to stalk his potential prey, a different sound, a far more ominous sound, froze him in his tracks. The soft, chilling crunch of multiple paws on the snow, approaching rapidly from several directions. The wolf pack had been relentlessly tracking Max for the last agonizing hour, following his inexperienced trail through the deep snow with practiced, terrifying ease. Led by a battle-scarred alpha female the locals had chillingly named Shadow for her dark gray coat, the pack had been pushed into new, unfamiliar hunting territories by the brutal winter. Their usual prey of elk and deer had become dangerously scarce, forcing them to consider smaller quarry they might normally completely ignore. Max's raw, primal fear filled the cold air as 5 massive wolves emerged silently from the dense trees, their movements coordinated with generations of ruthless hunting experience. Shadow took point, her piercing amber eyes locked intently on the tiny bobcat with predatory focus. To her right, her massive mate, easily identifiable by a distinctive white patch on his chest, moved swiftly to cut off any desperate escape route toward the deeper forest. 3 younger wolves completed the deadly circle, their tongues lolling out in anticipation of an easy, gruesome meal. The Bobcat Cub's tiny heart hammered frantically against his ribs as his wide, terrified eyes darted from one menacing wolf to another. His mother's hushed warnings about wolves echoed in his ears. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the sheer terror of facing a whole pack alone. His small size, usually a crucial advantage for moving silently through the forest's dense undergrowth, now seemed like a cruel, mocking joke against these efficient, merciless killers. Bob Johnson had just finished meticulously checking his 3rd monitoring station when he heard it. A high-pitched cry of pure, unadulterated terror that sliced through the still winter air like a razor-sharp knife. 28 long years in the field had taught him to instantly recognize the vocalizations of every predator and prey species in the region. But this sound carried a heart-wrenching note of desperate youth that made his chest clench with sudden, profound concern. Without conscious thought, his body reacted. He was already moving swiftly through the forest, his trusty snowshoes allowing him to traverse the deep drifts with practiced, urgent ease. The tranquilizer gun was instinctively in his hands, though he knew using it would be an absolute last resort. Human intervention in predator-prey relationships was generally strongly discouraged. But something about that raw, terrified cry had triggered a response deep within him, a response that transcended professional protocol. The scene that greeted him as he crested a small rise stole his breath and sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through his veins. The wolf pack had a young bobcat cub cornered against a jagged granite outcropping. The small feline's fur was bristling in a desperate attempt to make himself appear larger and more threatening. Bob instantly recognized Shadow. He had been tracking this particular pack for months, but it was the tiny bobcat cub that utterly captured his attention and tugged fiercely at his heartstrings. The poor little fellow couldn't have been more than 4 months old, barely weaned, and already showing the heartbreaking signs of severe malnutrition, suggesting he had been alone for several agonizing days. Even as Bob watched, the cub swiped with surprising, desperate courage at the nearest snarling wolf, though its tiny claws found nothing but empty air. Time seemed to slow to a torturous crawl as Bob frantically assessed his limited options. The seasoned professional in him knew that predation was a natural, albeit sometimes brutal, part of the delicate ecosystem. The wolves desperately needed to eat, and nature could be terrifyingly cruel in its cold efficiency. But as he watched the tiny, defenseless bobcat fighting against impossible odds with such unwavering determination, a wave of emotion washed over him. He thought instantly of all the helpless animals Emily had tirelessly rehabilitated at the center, of all the times a small, compassionate intervention had led to something truly magnificent. His decision was made in a heartbeat. Bob reached quickly into his pack and pulled out a specially designed canister of wolf deterrent, a unique combination of sound and scent that he had painstakingly developed himself over years of dedicated field research. Just as Shadow tensed her powerful muscles for the final, deadly lunge, Bob activated the device and hurled it with all his might into the narrow space separating the snarling wolves and their intended, terrified prey. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The canister erupted, releasing a high-pitched, piercing frequency that wolves found particularly distressing, combined with a potent scent that mimicked their most feared natural competitors. Shadow's ears flattened instantly against her skull in obvious distress, and she took several involuntary steps backward, her confused pack reluctantly following her lead. Bob didn't hesitate, didn't waste a single precious second. Moving with deliberate confidence, he positioned his own body firmly between the bewildered wolves and the petrified bobcat cub, his body language projecting an aura of quiet authority rather than outright aggression. He had learned long ago that wolves were incredibly intelligent creatures, capable of quickly assessing risk versus reward. And his unexpected presence, combined with the unsettling deterrent, was rapidly shifting that crucial equation. "Easy now, Shadow," he spoke in a firm, calm voice. One hand raised in a non-threatening gesture, while the other kept the tranquilizer gun readily accessible. "There's easier prey out there for you and yours." The imposing alpha female held his gaze for what felt like an eternity, and in that intense, unwavering look, Bob saw something that instantly reminded him why he had fallen deeply in love with a wildlife work in the first place. There was cold calculation there, yes, but also a spark of undeniable intelligence and a remarkable capacity for adaptation. After what seemed like an age, Shadow threw back her head and let out a short, guttural howl, as if by silent command. The entire pack melted back silently into the dense forest, leaving only their telltale tracks in the pristine snow as chilling evidence they had ever been there. With the immediate, terrifying threat neutralized, Bob turned his full attention to the tiny Bobcat Cub, which had pressed itself fearfully against the cold, unyielding rock face. Its small chest heaving rapidly with exhaustion and lingering terror. Up close, the heartbreaking signs of the cub's desperate situation were even more apparent. Its fragile ribs were clearly visible beneath its thin, matted fur, and its wide eyes held the dull, glassy look of severe dehydration. "Hey there, little fellow," Bob said softly, his voice gentle and soothing as he slowly removed his thick outer jacket. "You've had quite a morning, haven't you?" The cub hissed weakly, more out of sheer fear than genuine aggression, but didn't even attempt to run as Bob carefully approached. Years of invaluable experience had taught him how to handle injured and traumatized wildlife, and he could clearly see that this poor cub was far too exhausted and desperately hungry to put up much of a fight. With practiced, gentle movements, Bob carefully wrapped his warm jacket securely around the small, trembling feline, creating a comforting bundle that would both keep the cub warm and protect him from any accidental scratches. As he carefully lifted the precious package, he was struck by how incredibly light the tiny animal was. Far too light for a cub this age. "Emily's going to absolutely love you," he murmured softly, already picturing his daughter's compassionate reaction to this newest, unexpected rescue. The ominous storm clouds were beginning to gather ominously overhead as Bob carefully made his way back to his waiting truck, the precious bundle cradled protectively against his chest. The tense drive back to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was filled with Bob constantly checking on his fragile passenger. The exhausted cub had finally succumbed to sleep, its small body finally giving in to the overwhelming stress and fatigue of its terrifying ordeal. As he drove, Bob quickly called ahead to the center, knowing Emily would want to be fully prepared for their urgent arrival. "Dad, everything okay?" Emily's concerned voice crackled through the truck's speakers. "Got a special delivery for you, kiddo. Young Bobcat Cub, probably around 4 months old. Severely malnourished and dehydrated. Just rescued it from a wolf pack." There was a brief, tense pause on the line. "Dad, you know the strict protocol about predator-prey interactions." I know," Bob interrupted gently. "But Emily, this one's different. The mother's been gone for days, based on its condition. It wouldn't have survived another single day out there, wolves or no wolves." He could almost hear his daughter's professional resolve softening slightly. "Bring it in through the back entrance. I'll have the examination room ready." The Montana Wildlife Rehabilitation Center was a state-of-the-art facility, though its unassuming exterior remained deliberately modest. A large barn-like structure discreetly set back from the main road. As Bob pulled up to the back entrance, Emily was already anxiously waiting, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing the familiar scrubs that had become her second skin. "Let me see our patient," she said immediately as Bob carefully stepped out of the truck, her professional demeanor instantly taking over. As he gently unwrapped his jacket, Emily's expression softened with immediate compassion. "Oh, Dad, he's absolutely beautiful." The tiny cub had stirred during the drive and now blinked up at them with weary, innocent blue eyes. They both knew the color would gradually change to a striking yellow as he matured. Despite his weakened condition, there was still a fierce, undeniable spark of life flickering in those young eyes, a testament to his incredible will to survive. "Let's get him inside and thoroughly checked out," Emily said, gently leading the way to the brightly lit examination room. The next hour was a flurry of focused activity as they meticulously assessed the cub's fragile condition. Emily's skilled hands moved with gentle efficiency as she carefully checked vital signs, drew necessary blood samples, and began the crucial process of careful rehydration. "Well, it's definitely a male," she announced matter-of-factly as she worked. "About 4 months old, just as you estimated, severe dehydration and malnutrition, but thankfully, no serious injuries. Actually, Dad, considering absolutely everything he's been through, he's in remarkably good shape." Bob watched from the corner of the room, a small, relieved smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "He's a fighter, that's for sure. You should have seen him bravely facing down those wolves." Emily looked up from her important work, her eyes serious. "He'll need at least 2 months of intensive rehabilitation before we can even consider releasing him back into the wild. And that's assuming absolutely everything goes perfectly." "Does he have a name yet?" Bob asked, knowing his daughter's soft spot for naming special cases. Emily thoughtfully studied the tiny cub for a long moment as she finished carefully securing the intravenous line that would help rehydrate him. "Max," she said finally, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "He just looks like a Max to me." And so began Max's incredible journey. From a desperate survivor clinging to life to a remarkable rehabilitation success story. The first crucial week was a tense blur of activity, with Emily and her dedicated team working tirelessly around the clock to stabilize Max's precarious condition. The tiny cub proved to be an ideal patient, remarkably accepting of the necessary treatment with a quiet determination that seemed to perfectly mirror his fierce will to survive in the unforgiving wild. Bob visited the center every single day, often bringing his detailed field notes to update Emily while quietly sitting in Max's cozy recovery room. The tiny cub seemed to genuinely recognize him, his intelligent eyes following Bob's every movement with increasing curiosity rather than fear. By the end of the second week, Max had miraculously gained enough strength to begin tentatively exploring his small enclosure, his natural, youthful curiosity slowly starting to overcome his initial weariness and trauma. As the weeks gradually turned into months, Max's remarkable recovery became something of a heartwarming local sensation. Emily had always maintained a strict professional distance from the animals in her dedicated care, fully understanding that they would eventually need to return to their wild existence. But there was something undeniably special about Max. Perhaps it was the truly extraordinary circumstances of his dramatic rescue. Or maybe it was the unique way he seemed to subtly respond to human presence, while still fiercely maintaining his essential wild nature. The carefully planned rehabilitation process was methodical and thorough. As Max steadily regained his lost strength, Emily and her team began strategically introducing elements that would help properly prepare him for his eventual release back into his natural habitat. Live prey was carefully provided in ways that would encourage and hone his crucial hunting instincts. And human contact was gradually and deliberately reduced to prevent any harmful imprinting. Bob continued his regular, diligent monitoring of the wolf pack that had nearly ended Max's young life, noting with detached professional interest how they had adapted their hunting patterns in direct response to the ever-changing winter conditions. Shadow and her formidable pack had successfully brought down a large elk the week after their tense encounter with Max, clearly proving that their desperate attempt on the tiny Bobcat Cub had indeed been born out of extreme circumstances rather than their normal hunting behavior. As the first hopeful signs of spring began to gently soften the harsh Montana landscape, Max's eagerly anticipated release date rapidly approached. The tiny cub had grown into a healthy, vibrant young bobcat, his once thin coat now glossy and thick, his small muscles strong and agile from months of carefully controlled exercise. Emily had meticulously selected a perfect release site, well away from any known wolf territories, but still within ideal bobcat habitat. The day of release dawned clear and cool, with the very first delicate hints of spring visible in the tiny buds just beginning to appear on the bare branches of the trees. Bob and Emily worked quietly together to carefully prepare Max for transport, both feeling the undeniable emotional weight of the significant moment despite their many years of professional experience. "You know," Emily said softly as they drove to the chosen release site. Max secure and surprisingly calm in a sturdy transport carrier in the back of the truck. "When you first brought him in, I honestly wasn't entirely sure if we were doing the right thing. Natural selection and all that." Bob nodded slowly, understanding her conflicted feelings completely. "Nature can certainly be cruel, Em, but it can also be absolutely magnificent in its incredible capacity for resilience. Sometimes, all it truly needs is just a small, compassionate chance." The carefully chosen release site was absolutely perfect. A rugged, rocky area with plenty of natural cover and a healthy, established population of rabbits and other essential prey species. As they carefully set up the transport carrier, Emily performed one final, thorough check of Max's condition, her movements efficient, yet incredibly gentle. "Ready to go home, buddy?" she whispered softly to the young bobcat, who watched her with calm, intelligent yellow eyes. They had indeed changed color as he had matured. The carrier door was finally opened, and for a long, poignant moment, Max simply sat there, calmly surveying his brand new surroundings. Then, with the same unwavering determination he had bravely shown in facing down the terrifying wolf pack months ago, he confidently emerged into the bright morning sunlight. He paused briefly, just for a fleeting moment, looking back at Bob and Emily. And in that powerful moment, both father and daughter felt the full, profound impact of what they had accomplished together. Then, with a final, silent flick of his short tail, Max was gone, disappearing silently into the dense undergrowth with the effortless grace that made bobcats such incredibly effective predators. Emily wiped a single, heartfelt tear from her cheek, not even bothering to hide it from her understanding father. "You did good, kiddo," Bob said softly, putting a comforting arm around her shoulders. "You did real good." In the months that followed, their strategically placed wildlife cameras occasionally caught brief glimpses of a healthy, thriving young bobcat in the release area. Its distinctive spotted coat was unmistakable to those who knew exactly what to look for. Max had not just survived, he was clearly thriving, his very presence helping to maintain the delicate balance of the intricate ecosystem. Bob often thought back to that pivotal winter morning when he had made the split-second decision to intervene. In a long and distinguished career spanning several decades, that particular moment stood out vividly as a powerful reminder of when the sometimes blurry line between strict professional protocol and deeply felt compassionate action had ultimately led to something truly extraordinary. The remarkable story of Max became far more than just another successful wildlife rehabilitation case. It became a powerful testament to the profound impact that human compassion, when wisely guided by knowledge and a deep respect for the natural world, could truly have. Emily kept a single, cherished photograph proudly displayed in her office at the rehabilitation center. A striking image of Max on the very day of his triumphant release. His proud, alert stance and intelligent expression perfectly captured everything they had worked so diligently to preserve. That one powerful photo served as a constant daily reminder of exactly why they dedicated their lives to this demanding but incredibly rewarding work, often drawing the fascinated attention of curious visitors and enthusiastic new volunteers. 1 year after Max's successful release back into the wild, Bob was conducting his regular, routine wildlife surveys in the familiar area when he came across something truly remarkable. In a protected hollow nestled beneath a rocky overhang, he found undeniable evidence of a bobcat den. Moving with the utmost care and utilizing all his extensive years of invaluable experience to move silently and undetected, he caught a fleeting glimpse of a very familiar form. It was Max, now fully grown and incredibly healthy, calmly watching over two tiny, adorable cubs of his very own. The young bobcat had not only survived against all odds, but had also successfully found a mate and was now proudly contributing to the critical next generation. Bob's expertly trained eye could clearly see that Max still bore the distinctive spot pattern that had made him so easily recognizable during his time in rehabilitation. But now, he moved with the confident, fluid grace of a mature predator, completely at home in his natural environment. The tiny cubs, barely visible in the shadows of the den, were undeniable proof of nature's incredible resilience and the truly far-reaching effects of that one crucial act of compassionate intervention. That evening, as Bob excitedly shared his incredible discovery with Emily over a well-deserved dinner, their conversation naturally turned to the broader implications of their vital work. The rehabilitation center had steadily grown over the years, taking in an ever-increasing number of animals in desperate need and diligently training new staff in the delicate art of balancing essential assistance with the crucial understanding of natural processes. "You know what I sometimes think about?" Emily said thoughtfully, pushing her plate aside and leaning forward intently. "That morning with the wolves. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't made that split-second decision—" Bob nodded slowly, understanding her unspoken thought completely. One seemingly small action can indeed ripple outward in countless ways we might never even imagine. Max isn't just one successfully rescued bobcat anymore. He's become an integral part of the entire ecosystem's ongoing recovery story. The remarkable success of Max's rehabilitation and release had truly far-reaching effects that extended far beyond just one bobcat's precious life. The detailed documentation of his unique case, meticulously maintained by Emily, became an invaluable resource for other wildlife rehabilitation centers grappling with similar situations involving orphaned predator cubs. The specific protocols carefully developed during his intensive care were further refined and widely shared, significantly helping to improve the survival rates for other vulnerable young animals in similar dire circumstances. The inspiring story also played a crucial role in bridging the sometimes wide gap between the local ranching community and dedicated wildlife conservationists. When Emily passionately presented Max's incredible case at a well-attended community meeting, thoughtfully focusing on the delicate balance between essential predator conservation and necessary human intervention, she found an unexpectedly receptive audience. Even some of the traditionally skeptical ranchers, who had often viewed predators primarily as threats to their livelihoods, began to truly see the inherent value in maintaining healthy, thriving wildlife populations. 5 years after Max's dramatic rescue, the Montana Wildlife Rehabilitation Center had proudly become a model facility, widely known and respected for its consistently successful rehabilitation and release programs. Emily had enthusiastically expanded her vital role, diligently training new veterinarians in the specialized field of wildlife care, while continuing to personally oversee the most critical and challenging cases. Bob, though officially retired and enjoying a bit more free time, still enthusiastically conducted regular wildlife surveys, his extensive expertise more valuable than ever in accurately tracking the overall health of the local predator populations. The wolf pack that had nearly ended Max's young life still remained in the general area, though their numbers and carefully guarded territory had naturally shifted somewhat over the passing years. Shadow, the resilient alpha female, had successfully produced several more litters of healthy pups, ensuring the pack's continued presence as a vital part of the intricate ecosystem. Bob's continued careful observations clearly showed how the wolves had successfully adapted to the ever-changing environmental conditions, their hunting patterns naturally evolving to focus more on their traditional prey as the deer and elk populations gradually recovered. One crisp autumn morning, as Bob was diligently checking his network of strategically placed wildlife cameras, he came across a set of tracks in the soft mud near a gently flowing stream that told an extraordinary story. He immediately recognized the distinct prints of a wolf pack moving purposefully through the area, and nearby, the smaller but equally confident tracks of a bobcat, very likely Max, having passed through the exact same space just hours apart. But unlike that desperate, terrifying day years ago, these tracks showed absolutely no signs of pursuit or conflict. Instead, they simply represented the normal, peaceful movements of two different predator species sharing the same territory, each successfully filling their own crucial niche in the complex and interconnected web of forest life. This, Bob reflected with a deep sense of quiet satisfaction, was perhaps the most powerful and meaningful testament to their life's work. Not just the miraculous survival of one small animal, but the tangible restoration of a delicate natural balance. The forest could indeed support both wolves and bobcats, each magnificent species playing its own crucial role in maintaining the overall health and vitality of the entire ecosystem. As he stood there quietly studying those telling tracks in the soft, early morning light, Bob heard a familiar, subtle sound, the soft padding of paws on fallen leaves. Looking up carefully, he caught a fleeting glimpse of a mature bobcat moving silently through the dense underbrush. The magnificent cat paused briefly, its intelligent yellow eyes meeting Bob's in a profound moment of quiet recognition that seemed to transcend the usual boundaries between wild animals and humans. Whether it was indeed Max, or perhaps one of his thriving offspring, Bob couldn't be absolutely certain, but in that moment, it didn't really matter. What truly mattered was that the bobcat moved with the undeniable confidence of an animal completely at home in its natural environment, neither fearful of humans nor in any way dependent on them. This, Bob knew with absolute certainty, was the truest measure of successful wildlife rehabilitation, not just saving an animal's precious life, but also diligently preserving its essential wildness. The bobcat disappeared back into the forest as silently and gracefully as it had appeared, leaving Bob with a profound sense of deep satisfaction in his many dedicated decades of wildlife work. He had witnessed both heartbreaking failures and exhilarating successes, had seen the sometimes harsh realities of natural selection firsthand, and had also recognized the occasional crucial need for thoughtful human intervention. Max's inspiring story perfectly represented the ideal balance between these powerful forces. A remarkable moment when human compassion, wisely guided by scientific knowledge and a deep respect for natural processes, had ultimately helped to maintain the delicate equilibrium of the wild. Back at the bustling rehabilitation center, Emily was enthusiastically preparing the next generation of dedicated wildlife professionals, diligently teaching them the invaluable lessons learned from countless cases just like Max's. The center had continued to grow and flourish, expanding to include vital educational programs for local schools, helping to foster a deep understanding and genuine appreciation for wildlife in the community's youngest members. The key, she would often tell her eager students, is knowing precisely when to act and, equally importantly, when to respectfully step back. Nature has its own ancient wisdom, its own intricate ways of maintaining balance. Our crucial role is not to unwisely interfere with that delicate balance, but to thoughtfully help restore it when human activities or truly extraordinary circumstances have unfortunately disrupted it. The incredible story of Max, the tiny bobcat cub who bravely faced down a pack of menacing wolves, miraculously survived against seemingly impossible odds, and went on to successfully contribute to the recovery of his species, became far more than just a heartwarming tale of successful wildlife rehabilitation. It became a powerful symbol of hope, a poignant reminder that even in the face of nature's harshest realities, there was always room for compassionate intervention, wisely guided by knowledge, and for the truly remarkable resilience of life itself. As the years continued to pass, countless other animals in desperate need would come through the center's welcoming doors, each with their own unique story of survival and eventual recovery. But Max's inspiring story would always remain particularly special, a powerful testament to the profound difference that one single moment of thoughtful intervention, wisely guided by both scientific knowledge and deep human compassion, could truly make in the grand, ongoing tapestry of wilderness preservation. The cherished photo in Emily's office continued to draw fascinated attention, sparking countless important conversations about wildlife conservation and the crucial role of humans in protecting and diligently preserving the precious natural world. And somewhere out there in the vast forests of Montana, Max's remarkable legacy lived on through his thriving offspring, their very presence a vital part of the ecosystem's continuous story of survival, adaptation, and enduring renewal. Bob and Emily's dedicated work had clearly shown that while nature could indeed be undeniably cruel, it could also be gently guided back toward a healthy balance when human intervention was applied with wisdom, restraint, and a deep understanding of its intricate workings. Their own inspiring story, forever intertwined with the unforgettable story of Max, had become an integral part of the larger, ongoing narrative of wildlife conservation in America. A powerful reminder that every single life saved, every animal successfully returned to its rightful place in the wild, contributed meaningfully to the vital preservation of the natural heritage they all worked so tirelessly to protect. Valuable lesson. This story beautifully illustrates that while nature operates on its own, often harsh principles, human compassion, when informed by knowledge and respect for the natural world, can play a crucial role in restoring balance and giving vulnerable individuals a second chance, ultimately benefiting the entire ecosystem. Please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on Max's incredible journey. Rate this video on a scale of 1 to 10, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of wildlife conservation.